Hello everyone, my name is Alex and welcome to the very first video on the Snail Works YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a Snail Works carbon steering wheel inside your very own Subaru. Now in my case, I'm going to be using my 2001 Subaru Crosstrek as an example, but this video is also applicable if you have a Forester, Ascent, Outback wagon, Impreza, or Legacy from 2018 and up. And of course, a full list of compatible vehicles will be in the description down below. To get started, you'll need these tools: a Phillips head and flathead screwdriver, a 10mm socket wrench, a 17mm socket wrench with an extension on it, and finally a 5mm hex key. The first step is disconnecting our battery terminals with the 10mm socket wrench to avoid electrical issues. This is super important because we're going to be dealing with airbags, and you guys all know what happens when you accidentally set off one of those. Not fun. Bad. Very bad. Not fun. Okay, now that you've disconnected your battery, it's time to remove the stock wheel. So before we remove the airbag, we want to make sure that the steering wheel is straight, it's locked, and it's centered. If you don't do that, it's going to be a total nightmare trying to align everything later. So make sure you do that. Then you're going to take your hex key and you're going to locate the 3 holes positioned right behind the wheel. So there's one on the left, there's one on the right, and there's one right underneath. Put it right into this hole, and we're gonna find an edge that's catching on, and we're gonna press down on that, and the airbag should pop right out. Same for the other side. The bottom one's a little tricky sometimes, but be sure that you're just poking straight up, not this way, but more this way, and you should also find that edge. There we go. Once you have all 3 clips undone, we can gently lift up this airbag, place it in this position so it hangs this way. And using our flathead screwdriver, we can go ahead and lift up those tabs. Then you're going to want to disconnect the blue wire first, and then you can remove the black connector and then the orange connector. Now you can set your airbag aside. Okay, now we're going to want to disconnect this plastic connector up here. Next, we're going to take our 17mm socket wrench. We're going to place it on the center nut. We're going to loosen it just a little bit. Now we're going to grab the top of the steering wheel and we're going to give it a good shake. You should feel it come loose. And now we can fully loosen this nut and take it out. Once that's done, you can move these cables out of the way and gently lift up on the steering wheel to take it off. Once the wheel is off, you're going to want to remove this screw in the front and also these 2 screws in the back. Oops. Notice how these 3 screws are the same type. So keep these together and try not to mix them up with the other screws. Remove this bottom trim piece first. And then you'll see that there's another screw right down here. Loosen that as well. After you've removed that screw, this whole rear piece should just come right off. Next, undo these 2 screws holding the radio controls in. Okay, side note, and this is super important. When you're removing these radio controls, you're going to want to press down on this plastic piece. Not this one, not this one, this one. These are really brittle, and if you press on any of these 2 too hard, this whole thing is going to break off. So be super careful when you do this part. Now you can take your radio controls and set them aside for now. Grab your flathead screwdriver. Locate these 3 pins that hold the airbag in place. And we're going to take the end of it and pry them off. Just like that. Take these 3 pins and set them aside as well. And now we're completely done with removing the parts from the stock steering wheel. Now with the old wheel completely stripped, we can start moving the parts onto your new Snail Works carbon wheel. Man, I gotta say, this carbon wheel feels amazing. Start by reinserting these plastic clips that you just took off on the new steering wheel. Now, reattach the controls. Try not to over-tighten these screws, just because you're screwing into plastic, and those have the tendency to strip. So just be careful. Okay, now the rear piece. Before you screw in this cover, make sure that these cables are set into the plastic first. And finally, this plastic trim piece. Once again, a reminder to not over-tighten these screws. A lot of them are screwing right into plastic, so there's a chance to strip them. Now that all the parts are on our new wheel, we can go ahead and start fitting the carbon wheel back under the steering column. Go ahead and reconnect your controls connector. Place the steering wheel sort of straight, as straight as you can get, and push down. There we go. Now take the steering wheel nut and screw it back onto the steering wheel. Once the steering wheel is placed back in, take your radio controls connector and reconnect it. Next, take your center nut and screw it back on. Take your 17mm socket wrench and tighten that nut down. And finally, the airbag. Start by attaching the blue cable, and then the black and orange connector for the airbag. Push all three corners down until you hear a solid click. Remember, the airbag is a crucial safety feature, so really take your time with this step and make sure that all three corners are secured. Once sure that everything looks good and feels good, it's time to reconnect the battery. All right, well, that pretty much wraps up this installation video. If you found any of this information useful, please consider liking and subscribing. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment down below or send us an email, and we can get back to you as soon as we can. If you're interested in picking up Snail Works carbon steering wheel for yourself, consider visiting our site at www.snailworks.us. It really helps us out a lot. All right, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching again, and I'll catch you guys soon.